Welcome to the Stocks on the Rock Show. Whether you like it neat, on the rocks, chilled, or warm, everybody's happier when there's money in their account and a drink in their glass. Let's get started. A new week, a new stock. Welcome to Stocks on the Rocks, the show where we talk about stocks while we have a cocktail in hand. And today, I've got a listener request. I got somebody who said, I really want to analyze Boeing. We're talking Boeing today. I'm not sure what motivated them to talk about Boeing. Maybe it was the plane above my head. Maybe it was a plane that they were going to get on. But today we're going to talk about Boeing. And when I think about Boeing, I think about airplanes. When I think about airplanes, I think about vacation. So our spirit of the day is Plantation Rum, aged 5 years. Hey everybody, if you're new to the channel, do me a favor, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get the alerts and the updates. If you have a stock that you'd like us to analyze, do me a favor, put it in the comment section down below, or a spirit that maybe you want me to drink and analyze and give you my opinions. I promise you won't have to twist my arm. I'll give it a try. So let's talk a little bit about this one. So Plantation Rum, this is actually a 5-year aged 5-year Barbados rum. Now this is the higher test, we'll call it the grown-up version of this Plantation Rum. Now you can tell by the amount of rum left in this bottle that this one gets used a lot more frequently. This is actually the first time I've ever tried this 5-year rum, so I'm interested to see. This is apparently a sipping rum, a rum that you can just sip and relax. This I use as a mixing rum, and I've done my fair share of mixing. This I've done a lot with dark and stormies. We'll make with this. This is a really good rum to go with ginger beer. This is, for those of you that use Bacardi or you use Captain Morgan, this to me is about the best rum I think I've ever had, and I was turned on to it by a really good friend who uses this, and so I thought, well, let's try a sipping rum as an alternative and something new. So I thought we would give this one a try. Like I said, it's the grown-up version. So smelling this and kind of getting it started, and now I'm doing this with no ice. I think it'll probably be better over ice. I typically like most of my spirits on the rocks, hence the name of the show, rather than neat. But okay, so this is the first. I've never had this before, and it's a totally different smell than the mixing rum that I use. And when I smell this one, okay, bear with me. In my mind, I smell tobacco, right? I smell like it's a tobacco, but not a bad tobacco. It's like somebody's pipe, right? So I've always liked the smell of pipes. If you're walking down I always envision somebody smoking a pipe outside of a pub reading a G.K. Chesterton novel, right? That's what I get out of here is like a pipe tobacco smell, but also there's some sweetness to it. So giving it a taste, it tastes almost nothing like it smells. I actually get bitter right in the front, which actually surprises me. I thought it would be more sweet. Now, rum, especially with what it's mixed with, can come off as, what's that word? Cloyingly sweet. This one is now I'm getting a hint of sweetness in the backside of it. But when I first drink it, it's kind of, it's a little bit more of a bitterness followed by the sweetness, and it's almost like the best way that I can put it is an apple pie that was left in the oven a little too long. Like it's an apple pie with some burnt edges. So do I love it? I'll drink it. There's no question. But I think it would probably be better over ice. I don't have any ice in this glass. I think it'll probably be better over ice. We're still going to drink it while we talk about our stock. Don't get me wrong. But I think that I think it's a good one. I think it's worth giving a try. If you want to try a sipping rum, I think this is a good one to try. I still might want it over ice. I'll check it out over ice and leave it in the comments below and let you know what I think. But let's talk a little bit about our stock. And so our stock this week is Boeing. And everybody knows Boeing. Everybody knows, Boeing does airplanes. Well, what most people don't realize is that Boeing's been around since 1916. It was actually started by a timber merchant. It was somebody who made his money in timber. William E. Boeing founded the company in 1916, and they really started selling flying boats, is what they were called. They sold flying boats to the Navy during World War I. Now, these flying boats and to the Navy were a huge success, and Boeing got on the map to provide products to the military, and the rest is history. As Boeing, Boeing is very, very well known for being part of military supplies of helicopters and aircraft and air marine vehicles. And so when I think about Boeing, certainly you think about the Flying Fortress, right? The B-52 bomber. I'm not sure what that one is above me, but the point is that when we think about Boeing very, very much has a very heavy-handed foot in the U.S. national defense contracting. It's a big part of their business. But what I think most non-military thoughts go right to commercial airliners, right? So, and it's really a tale of a couple of different stories. A couple of years ago, Boeing launched the 787 Dreamliner. I fly United Airlines a lot, which, by the way, I didn't realize United Airlines was started by Boeing, and then they spun it off separately. I had no clue about that. But in my research, I found that out. But the 787 Dreamliner is a wonderful airplane to fly on. But it had a couple of rough patches before it started. There was a couple of battery fires, and those battery fires, nobody got hurt, thank God. They would affect the stock for a day or two, but the 787 Dreamliners went off without a hitch, took off and did great. And then came the 737 Maxes. And the 737 Maxes have had a tremendous number of flaws that have unfortunately caused fatalities and a couple of crashes. And the crashes that caused those fatalities caused the FAA to ground all of the 737 Maxes, as well as pretty much every aviation governing body throughout the world has said, okay, until we get this problem figured out, they're all grounded. Well, what did that do to Boeing? Well, for Boeing, that was their newest plane. All of the orders immediately stopped. But they still had some in production. Well, that continued to go until it got to the point where now there's 737s parked in the employee parking lots of Boeing because there's just so many of them on an overflow. Now, from a fundamental perspective to the stock, what that did was it caused about a 35% drop in sales over the last quarter. And about a 27% drop in earnings per share. So from a fundamental standpoint, terrible news. And then here recently, just in the last few days, we've seen that there was, Boeing came out and said that they're going to pay the families roughly $145,000 each for the lives of the families that were affected. And certainly their lawyers are coming back saying, that is not going to fix this problem. It can't bring our loved ones back, which obviously it cannot. What's Boeing going to do? And they're looking at tremendous amount of legal battles on that side going forward. But the other side is what is each country going to do about the 737 MAX? Because just because the FAA says, okay, they can go back in the air, doesn't mean that every country is going to allow that as well. So Boeing now has a tremendous amount of legal battles and uphill fighting in order to get those planes in the air once they get the problem resolved. The latest story I think I read was something about the pilots were not the pilots were not ready to handle all of the changes for the 737. So one of the things that Boeing tried to do was they said, okay, well, since we're struggling on this front, let's go and acquire another company, and they went to buy Embraer. And the European Union said, slow down, we're not so sure about that. So from a fundamental and news-driven perspective, everything is bad news. There is no good news in sight. But if you're a trader and you've been in this for a while, or if you're a savvy investor and you've been in this for a while, you know that sometimes the news can be a bit deceiving. And so I want to go look at the technicals. And what do the technicals tell me about Boeing? So let's go ahead and first start by looking at the weekly chart. So you can see on the weekly chart that we've actually, we put in two consecutive lower swing lows. Right? Two consecutive lower swing lows on the weekly chart, but we've actually just put in a new swing high. And we just popped above that resistance on the weekly chart. And so that weekly chart where we popped above that resistance now gives us a new higher swing high. So we have a higher swing high on that weekly time period. You can see that we're nowhere near our 446 all-time high, but we're closing in on the gap fill area. Now moving down to a daily chart. So this is a picture of the year-to-date daily chart. Now on this year-to-date daily chart, the stock price is still up about 20% year-to-date. So it's still been a very strong bullish mover. But we want to focus our eyes on this area of supply. And this area of supply right here, this is where we have the amount of sellers overtaking the number of buyers. So when I'm looking at an area of supply that happens to be here, I wonder, how is price going to get to that region? Well, take a look at the most recent price action. And in our most recent price action, the market is chopping along sideways. Well, it's chopping along sideways even though there's a bunch of bad news. So what does that tell us about the stock? It tells me that Wall Street is not ready to knock this thing down. Matter of fact, I think that there's a better chance for us to rally in the short to intermediate term. I think in the short to intermediate term, there's a really good opportunity for price to rally from this area. Now, this blue line that I've just drawn here, in this blue line, this would be our resistance point. Now, we've got good solid basing below that area of resistance. Oftentimes basing below a resistance area, what we're doing is we're just clearing out all those buy and sell orders that are in the queue. If there's enough buy orders left to thrust price higher and not enough sell orders, we'll be able to continue to see price climb. Now, the piece of evidence that we can kind of add to this is what the moving averages are telling us. So looking at our moving averages, we've got we are currently positioned above our 20, above our 50, and above our 200 period moving average. However, a little caveat there is that our 200 is actually above our 50, which doesn't happen very often. But our 200 period moving average, which is kind of like the longer term, slower moving average, when the 50 crosses above the 200, there's going to be a number of algos that immediately kick off buy orders. And prices, I think at that point, have a better chance to continue to rally. So as an investor, the combination of a breakout area with a price magnet up above where there's a bunch of sell orders, as well as those moving averages approaching one another, all lead to better opportunity. Okay? Now the last thing that I'll look at with this is, how does this compare to the S&P? So look at this chart right here. The purple line represents the value of the S&P year to date. The candlesticks are obviously the value of Boeing. Now, Boeing has significantly underperformed the S&P year to date, no question. But what I'm more concerned with is, after the 737 MAX news came out, Boeing's actually performed much closer to the S&P. Matter of fact, maybe even better. So a lot of people would say, well, weakness tends to stay weak. And while I normally would agree with that, I think in this case it could be that the market sees this as a value compared to the S&P. And that this could be a slightly undervalued stock due to what we've seen happen. So here's my outlook and my thoughts. Let's look at Boeing from a short to intermediate term as a bullish opportunity with decent upside potential. Me personally, I would look to play that with options. You got to understand options a little bit more in depth than just playing the equity market, but I can use options as a way to enhance my portfolio, or I can use options as a way to speculate with much lower cost up front. So if you want to learn more about that, go to Traders Army, visit it, and we've got a lot of classes there on how to trade options and understand more about options. We'd love to have you go take a look at it. But options are a phenomenal vehicle, and I think in a stock priced about this level, 100 shares of this stock is going to cost you $38,000. So for most people, that's going to be a little bit of a chunk out of their portfolio. What if I could do that for $5,000 because I'm utilizing the options market? So just something to consider and to think about. So long term, I'm not sure what to think. It depends on what happens with that 737 MAX. Depends on what happens with the FAA. But short to intermediate term, I'm looking at this a bit bullish. So here's to our Plantation Rum this week. Guys, go ahead, give this one a go. Sipping rum. I'm gonna go put an ice cube in mine because I think it needs ice cube to open it up. It's so far not my favorite. Smells great. On the taste, not my favorite so far. But let me know what your comments are below. Please put them in the comment section down below. Leave me your thoughts on Boeing. I'd love to hear them. Leave me your thoughts on Plantation Rum, or if you've got a better sipping rum that you think is something I should investigate, let me know. Until next week, everybody, cheers.